Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. One topic I've been thinking about for a while is whether or not you should be using a debit card, a credit card, or cash when it comes to paying for things. It's honestly taken me a while to convince myself to make this video because personally, I have been using credit cards to pay for almost everything since I've been out of high school. And while I think that's the best option for me, I realize that choosing a payment method is not something that everybody considers. Like for example, I know some friends who whenever they buy something, they just throw down their default payment method, and that's usually their debit card, and sometimes it could even be cash. But choosing the right payment method depending on who you are and what you are buying can actually make a difference of upwards of thousands of dollars just for an everyday simple decision that you make. So today we're looking at the different benefits credit cards and debit cards can offer, the controversy that surrounds this seemingly mundane decision, and I'll give you some advice on what you should choose. First, let's talk about the drama. There's a cohort of people online, most notably a lot of the people that follow Dave Ramsey's financial advice, and they believe that credit cards are evil.
The credit card is the cigarette of the financial world. There's no upside to using it, only downsides. Is it going to kill everyone? No, but it kills a bunch of people.
Now, Dave's reasoning for this is that because it's easier to spend money on a credit card, as in you don't feel the pain of giving your cash away, it causes you to overspend and ultimately get yourself in financial trouble. But on the other side of the coin, you have whole communities out there dedicated to maximizing your credit card rewards. ThePointsGuy.com, for example, is a website and social media brand that gets millions of visits per month. You even have YouTube channels dedicated to credit cards, such as Ask Sebi's channel. He's a friend of mine here in San Francisco, as well as Graham Stephan. He actually uses credit cards effectively to reap the rewards and never have to pay interest. And what's fascinating to me is that if you were to sample, say, 10 of your friends about this question, you would probably get mixed answers on what side they fall on. People that are against credit cards are usually quite passionate about staying out of debt and controlling themselves emotionally. And people that are for credit cards are usually talking about the crazy benefits that they can achieve with their regular spend. And depending on who you are and what your behavior is actually like, there's probably a correct payment method for you. So let's look at the benefits of the debit card first. The biggest benefit of the debit card, in my opinion, is that you can't borrow money that you don't have. If you have $500 sitting in your checking account and you try to make a purchase of $600, the transaction will get denied. In that way, it's almost like a rate limiter for your own spending. You won't ever get in trouble with overspending, and there's no possible way to get in any type of consumer debt where you're making interest payments. The other benefit is that you don't have to apply for a debit card. They come standard with any checking account that you have, and because of this, there are no annual fees to pay for the card itself. Sure, your checking account might have a minimum balance required that you need to maintain in order to not be hit with a fee, but in general, there's no charges for actually having the physical debit card itself. And lastly, I think a debit card is great because of the convenience factor. You'll usually be able to pay for it at 99.9% of places, and you can do the same payments online with a debit card, and you can even make ATM withdrawals. And I feel like the mechanism of debit cards is really easy to understand, so when you swipe them, it's like you're spending your own cash just in digital form. So if you are in a place in your life where you have debt already, or if you just aren't that great with your finances, you actually would benefit from having a debit card because in that way, you won't be getting yourself into more financial trouble. Also, if you are one of those types of people that you know if you were given a credit limit that you would go right over it, or if you're someone without that much self-control, then a debit card is probably the best way to go. And this is actually 99% of the reason why Dave Ramsey is for debit cards. He says that most people that have a credit card have no discipline. He'll usually cite a few research studies on how people with credit cards can't control their impulses and are more likely to spend money. For him and many of his employees, they've probably experienced anecdotally the dangers of credit cards, which is that they can put you in a deep hole of debt if you aren't careful with them. But if you're watching this channel, you're probably decent with your finances, and I myself don't use a debit card, so why don't I? That's because in my opinion, if you can stay disciplined with your money, I think there are a lot of benefits to having a credit card and using it for most of your purchases. Now, real quick, before we get into that, a huge benefit, no matter what, is to subscribe to this channel. If you've been enjoying this video or my channel in general, make sure you're subscribed. It only takes about 0.1 seconds to hit that button down below, and I would truly appreciate it. One of the benefits of using a credit card is that you can get cash back and rewards for the everyday spending that you already do. So if you're someone who pays off their credit card all the time and never incurs any interest, then the typical downsides of a credit card usually go away and you can actually take advantage of the companies that are offering you these perks. So for example, with a Chase Sapphire Reserve, I get 3x points, or the equivalent of 3% cash back on dining and groceries. If I were to spend $10,000 on eating out and food for the entire year, that's an extra $300 in rewards that I'm getting, and besides using my points for airlines or hotels, I could even put those points towards paying off my credit card statement if I wanted to, so I think it's as good as cash to me. You can also get rewarded for paying your rent, for example, with cards like the Built Card, or in some cases, you can even pay your taxes on a credit card, which many people don't know. And that means for these bigger expenses that you might have, you can get rewarded for these too. The reason credit card companies offer these perks is that they are relying on a portion of their cardholders not paying off their card on time and then charging these people interest. In addition, a lot of the credit cards that come with great perks usually have an annual fee, so you need to actually spend enough money on those cards in order to break even on at least the annual fee. Just like a subscription fee, the credit card companies are banking on the fact that you forget about the fee or that you just don't use the card enough to justify the fee itself. And this is their business model because the credit card companies try to make a profit off of the people that aren't paying as much attention, and then for the small amount of people that are actually maximizing the rewards, they take a big loss in them. So in this way, if we're able to not incur any interest on a credit card and actually make up for the annual fee on some of these cards, then we can actually benefit from having them. There are actually some niche situations in which a bank has actually lost money on a credit card. So for example, the Built Card that I mentioned earlier that gets you rewarded for paying your rent. Some recent news came out that said that their partner bank, Wells Fargo, was losing, quote, $10 million a month on the program as savvy customers flock to the card. That means the cohort of people paying for their rent on the Built Card are smart enough with their money that they aren't incurring that much interest, and use of that card is actually costing Wells Fargo a lot of money for the remainder of that contract. Now personally, I've never paid any amount of credit card interest in my life, and I don't have any other existing debt, and I have control of my spending. And I think it would be senseless for me to put purchases on a debit card. And if you're someone like me who has no debt, doesn't overspend, and keeps track of their finances, it totally makes sense to use a credit card because on a debit card, you aren't getting rewarded at all for your spending. Another benefit of having a credit card and paying it off on time is that you establish a credit score. In the United States, whether you like it or not, a credit score is an integral part to functioning in society in a financial manner. There are people on the other side that say you never need a credit score and that you can just use cash for everything, including getting a mortgage for a house or buying a car, etc. But while that might be possible, it's going to be very difficult. Lenders typically want to see a credit score because that means you are a reliable borrower, and you can even save a ton of money on your loan over its lifetime if you're able to get a lower interest rate by having a good credit score. And having a good credit score can actually help you in other situations where you don't even need to borrow money. So for example, when I was applying to rent this particular apartment that I'm filming out of, my landlord commented to me that because my credit score was so high, it made my application seem way more appealing than any of the others that were out there. In this case, there wasn't any money being actually borrowed, but it was still a residual benefit that I got for having a good credit score. You can also qualify for lower insurance rates as noted by this CNBC article, which can also save you a lot of money in the long run. The last major benefit of buying things on a credit card is usually consumer and fraud protection. So if you ever buy something online or perhaps in a foreign country and you have a bad experience, you can usually call your credit card company since they're the intermediary, and in some cases you can even just get your money back without having to contact the vendor that sold you the item directly. For example, let's say you buy something from a dropshipping website because, I don't know, you're busy at night scrolling Instagram and you see an ad for something and it never even comes. You contact that dropshipping brand and you're like, hey man, I really want my money back because I haven't gotten this product yet, but they don't actually reply to you. In that case, if you did make a transaction on your credit card, you could call your credit card company up and just say, hey, this company never shipped me the product. I would like my money back. And what they can do is initiate a chargeback. Now, you shouldn't be making chargebacks for everything that you purchase if you don't have a good experience, but the idea is that in case you do need it, a credit card can actually do that for you and actually give you that money back. With a debit card, that might have been a situation where your bank could just not do that much about it. So credit cards can be great for many of the above reasons, and I kind of view them as a double-edged sword because there are so many dangers of credit cards, especially if you aren't in a good financial position. First, I think swiping a credit card is emotionally less painful than, say, handing over cash. When you're handing someone your physical cash, it emotionally hurts you to see that money leaving your possession to whoever you give that money to. But when you swipe a card, it almost doesn't feel like you're spending any money. It's like you're getting something for free, but really you spent money out of your bank account. I also want to acknowledge the fact that if you do amass too much credit card debt, it can actually be a situation in which you might not be able to financially recover from it. If you're making $50K a year, but you accrue $30K in credit card debt, then your monthly debt service alone and interest could be astronomical. It could get to a point where even if you were making a $450 a month payment, it would take you 34 years to pay off that balance. People in that situation often have to consolidate their debt, take on a personal loan from a family member, declare bankruptcy, or try to negotiate really hard with their lender to get some sort of payoff plan, and that type of debt can feel quite suffocating. I do believe that Dave Ramsey's intentions are good here, which is that in a world where every possible situation can happen, he just wants to recommend something that is guaranteed to not put you in debt. In his view, if you don't use a credit card, you can't get into credit card debt, and no one will ever come after Dave Ramsey for saying that. Now, what's my advice? I think if you want to use a credit card, you should be able to do the following. Number one, don't spend what you don't have. This is definitely rule number one and the primary rule out of all credit cards, which is that if you have, let's say, $1,000 in your checking account, don't spend $1,200 on a credit card because you don't have that money. Number two, if you do spend money on a credit card, pay it off in full every week, every 2 weeks, or even every month. I personally pay mine off every few days just to make sure I know exactly how much money I've spent. Number three ties into number two, never run a balance on a credit card ever. So anytime you do, you are killing the benefits of any credit card perk that you can get, and accruing interest is just a slippery slope. And number four, really try to understand what type of behavior you are susceptible to. If you're someone who is really impulsive with spending, maybe don't get a credit card. If you are someone that can't stick to deadlines, maybe don't get a credit card. If you are someone who has no debt, has their impulses and finances under control, then yes, feel free to opt for a credit card. I'm probably one of the most extreme people out there in terms of personal finance because I track every dollar that I spend as well as make. And since my mind is on finance 24/7, I think I am able to take advantage of the credit card system. However, if that is not you or not someone close to you, then you should probably stick to a debit card. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments what payment method you guys use, credit cards, debit cards, or even cash, and what you think the average American or citizen in your country should be doing. All right, if you're interested in one of my best personal finance videos on the channel, make sure to check out my 10 crucial personal finance lessons video right here. It's one of my favorites out there. I'll see you guys in that video or a future one on the channel. All right, bye.